Folks, good morning. This is Stephanie, and I am here to help lead you in the session for the Port of San Francisco, Understanding Public Works and Development. It seems as if we're having some technical issues this morning and that I can't share my screen yet. So can the host please help me for the enabling the screen sharing so that I can do that. So I'll defer to Tiffany and John. So thanks everybody, and good morning. And thank you as we hang in with some of the technical difficulties that we're having this morning. As we are awaiting for the screen sharing to be enabled, maybe we could have folks introduce themselves in the chat. If you could put your name, give us much information in terms of, what scope of work that you do. That would also be great. And I can read those out to make sure that we are all knowing who we each are. Great. Good morning to Alex. And what kind of work do you do? That would also be great. This is a webinar style format and recording is on. So what that means is that you'll probably have to be communicating via Tiffany, it looks like you were now sharing your screen. I was able to share my screen. I'm going to, if you could turn off your screen sharing, that would be great. Great. I hope everyone can now see my screen. And thanks for folks who are introducing themselves, the name of the work that they do. And thank you for hanging in there as we have a little bit of technical bumps this morning. But I think we're now in the position that we can get started. So good morning, everyone. This is going to be the official start of the session. My name is Stephanie Tang, and I am with the Port of San Francisco, and I'm the Contracts and Procurement Manager. What I'm here to talk to you today is about understanding public works development. So this is what we're going to cover today. First and foremost, we're going to provide kind of a broad view introduction to who is the port, what do we do as an entity, then a little bit around what do we buy and what do we procure, because you're here to figure out what are the opportunities. So you need to know what do we often buy. Next, I'm going to talk to you a little bit around a pretty complicated topic around government procurement regulations and kind of the broad view overview about where to look for these different opportunities. And then the real question is private development procurement and requirements. How is it that, what are the private developments and how are they similar and different from the other public works projects? And kind of how do you know when you're at a public works project versus a private development project, and the similarities and differences. So let's get started. So who's the port? The first slide is our mission and our goals. That's the best way to understand who we are and what do we care about. Our mission is that we manage the gateway to the waterfront to a world-class city. Everyone, when you think of San Francisco, folks often think of the water and the bridges. And we want to do this work in a way that is environmentally friendly, that's financially sustainable, and that provides maritime and recreational and economic opportunities to serve as an engine of growth for both our city as well as for the region. And our vision of how we do that is we deliver vibrant and diverse waterfront experiences for the city and as well as for the Bay. You'll hear me talk a lot about water and the Bay. And as you look at the schedule today, you'll see that there's another workshop around understanding specifically waterfront construction and how do you think about that, because the water is really kind of what connects us and makes us a little bit different from some of the other departments that exist in the city and county of San Francisco. So for my next slide, this is going to show you where's our jurisdiction. We're responsible for the 7.5 miles of waterfront, all the way from Fisherman's Wharf Aquatic Park, Pier 39 in the north, and all the way to the south to the southern waterfront, to Crane Cove Park and to India Basin. You'll see that we divide the port generally into 5 kind of geographic areas that we kind of think about. And you'll see that Pier 1 is just next to the ferry building, which is where a lot of the port offices are located. And the ferry building is the dividing line between the odd number piers to the north and the even number piers to the south. Now, while we touch all the waterfront, we also have some areas that are adjacent to the waterfront. So it's waterfront and then waterfront adjacent properties. We are the port, and unlike in Oakland, we are merely the port. We do not also include the airport. The airport SFO is a separate entity that is not that is all part of the city family, but is not part of this particular presentation with the Port of San Francisco. So what do? Well, we are the port, so we are a maritime organization. We preserve the port's diverse maritime portfolio, including a lot of the shipping, the ferries, the cruises, the excursion boats, the water taxiing, fishing and crabbing, ship repair, recreational boating, and water-dependent activities. So if you do something water-related, you're in the right place. But if you don't do something water-related, have no fear, we also do other work. So maritime and kind of port related items are the first area of work that the port often does. The second is we have a lot of wonderful spaces where we have commercial tenants, entertainment venues, restaurants, civic activities, and parks that complement our waterfront. And they provide economic opportunities as well as a place for all of us to visit, play, spend money, and participate in. The other great thing about the port is that we have some really wonderful open spaces. Aquatic Park, Heron's Head, the newly opened Crane Cove. We provide a network of parks which provide public access and natural areas along the waterfront and along the bay for everyone to use and enjoy. So if you do something related to resilience, environmental sustainability, other areas like that, these are all things that also are connected to the work that the port does, either in our open spaces or is related to maritime. And then of course we have other types of opportunities with construction and leasing and restaurants and all of that. I would want to share an important value of the port, which you can find out, hey, where are you headed? What really matters to you? And there's two documents that really provide a lot of wonderful information to understand who we are as the port. The first is our strategic plan, and that is updated, I believe, every 2 years, where that puts forth what are the kind of values, what are some of the bigger items that we're working on. And then also we have the Racial Equity Action Plan, which is what are we doing to make sure that the port is being an organization which creates opportunity and diversity for all of the San Francisco residents. And that is a really interesting, wonderful plan that is linked to the right. Someone's asked about if the slides are going to be available, and the answer is yes, everything's going to be available on a website, hopefully next week. If you've registered for this session, you will get all of this information as well as all the information we're presenting today. So hopefully now that I've gotten a chance to tell you a little bit about me, I wanted to make sure that we also heard from the folks who are listening today. Let's make sure that you introduce yourself in the chat with your name, your organization, if you're comfortable sharing, and other things so that the other participants can also scroll back and see who you are. And then I'm also interested to know the answer to 3 questions. So get to your keyboards, and these are the 3 questions. Number 1, have you ever worked for a public entity project before, for either the city or another government entity? Question 2, have you worked for a developer? And then question 3, to make sure that I'm providing information which is relevant to you, is one question or area that you hope this session covers. And we're going to have a Q&A at the end, and I want to make sure that we're able to answer the questions that you may have around public works, around private development. So hopefully folks are getting to their keyboards and you're answering these questions now. Bridget, could I ask you to type in these 3 questions? 1, have you worked on a public entity project? 2, have you worked for a developer? 3, one question area you hope this session covers into the chat. And once I see that that is done, I will move on. And thanks for joining everyone today. I am really excited to have you here today. And thanks for the folks who are starting to answer the questions. Great. I see some folks have worked on public entity projects. That's really helpful to know what agencies you're working with and how familiar you are with the public bidding process, because we can also answer some questions about that. Great. I see more answers coming in. Thank you, everybody. Oh, some folks have a lot of experience working with a number of developers. You definitely get a leg up in understanding how this process works. Great. So let me tell you about port contracting opportunities. There are four major areas of things that the city acquires, and us as the port acquires. The first are commodities and services. The second is construction. The third is professional services. And the fourth is private development. And we are going to dig in a little bit about each one. Keep in mind, for the first three areas, commodity services, construction, and professional services, the requirements and rules and process for the port is going to be very similar to the other city and county entities, because we all have to follow the basic requirements. The exact process and the who is going to be slightly different depending on each entity, and that's why you're here, to understand some of the port specific items. So the first thing let's talk about is Chapter 21, the acquisition of commodities and services. Now, I have stated the chapter of the administrative code. If you need some bedtime reading, you should definitely do it, because it'll get you to sleep quickly. But Chapter 21 is how the city and county acquires all the stuff, the commodities, as well as the services. So when you think about your business, are you services? Do you produce goods, or do you do construction, or what exactly do you do, and how do you fit into that? So that's a mapping that I hope you're doing as you kind of go through these questions. In terms of acquisition of commodities and services, the ultimate person who is the final signatory on the contract is not the port, but it's actually the purchaser, and that's the Office of Contract Administration, which is the final signatory. The commodities and general services solicitations are done by OCA, the Office of Contract Administration, whereas the professional services solicitations are actually done by the departments, such as the port, the PUC, SFO. So when you look at some of the public bid searching areas, people often want to know, hey, where do I find stuff, and why some stuff with OCA and why some stuff with the departments? I'm confused. So if it's a commodity and a general service, OCA will let it out. If it's a professional service, it's done by the department. We have another session being done today in this afternoon, I believe, with my colleague Elizabeth, and she's going to go through the professional services solicitations that are common at the port, as well as which are our larger professional services opportunities that we see as coming up in the next year. Information about some of those projects will also be available on the website being generated out of this event, and that will be available, I believe, next week. And as I already mentioned, if you did register for this event, you'll get information of when that website goes live. So commodities and services, that is through Chapter 21. Now, Chapter 6 is the area for public works contracting policies and procedures. You'll often hear people kind of lingo around city folks who will call the public works contracting departments the Chapter 6 departments. And we happen to be a Chapter 6 department. And what that means is that we build public works. Now, first of all, the other Chapter 6 departments include Public Works, of course, SFO, the PUC, Rec and Park, and I'm sure I'm forgetting SFMTA. Those are the other Chapter 6 building of infrastructure departments. And for those projects, the requirements are in Administrative Code Chapter 6. Now, a lot of folks ask me, hey, is there a specific opportunity for this specific scope? And oftentimes, when I'm talking to people about their specific scope, I have to remind them that when the city lets out work, they don't let it out first. The first thing you do is you rely on city employees in the port maintenance and public works department first. At the port, we have a public works department. We have a maintenance department, pardon me. of over 100 people who are doing the routine maintenance, the routine. We have a roofing shop, we have a diving shop, we have a plumbing shop, we have an electrical shop. So a lot of the scopes that may be let that you may be in that you're waiting for us to let out, I have to tell you there are city employees who are doing first. So in order for it to be let out, it has to be either an area that our maintenance folks are not going to do, that Public Works doesn't have the time or capacity to do right now. And then at that point, then the department will let it out. So when folks want to know, is this project going to be let out? We're often determining, can our maintenance folks do it first? Alternatively, can Public Works do it? And then finally, will it be let out? There is another workshop today with our engineering team, and they are the ones, I believe that's Shannon Karen's workshop, and she's going through the exact construction projects that are happening. So if you work in a specific construction trade and you want to know, is something going to be let out, that is done through our engineering team, and that's, please go to the Shannon workshop around construction and engineering opportunities later today. Chapter 6 is different from Chapter 21 in that the entities which solicit and award these contracts are us, the port. So we are the final signatory on a contract, and then our Port Commission will approve these formal contracts. So that's a quick background on the Chapter 6 departments, and as well as what the construction projects that the port does. Finally, what a lot of you are here about is, what about these private developments? And private developments are a special entity because they're not Chapter 6 and they're not Chapter 21. So they are their own special process. Under Chapter 21, these are real property transactions, and that includes leases as well as development agreements. What happens is that the port or the department runs a process, a public process, to select a developer. And then at the conclusion of that selection process to develop a large parcel of land or a larger project, which will involve a lease, a land disposition and development agreement sets forth the city and developer project terms. So what that means is that the city is then engaging the developer to be the lead entity in building and having the day-to-day responsibility for the project. The disposition development agreements is a really key agreement because that will tell you who is the lead city agency for a specific project. So I've already gotten questions about projects on Treasure Island. And even though Treasure Island touches the water, there is a special commission that works on that. And you have to look at who the agreement is with to understand who is the lead agency. The developer's team, once there is the developer agreement, is then the primary source of contract solicitations, awards, and contract agreements. And this is really important because oftentimes folks come to us at the port wanting to know about a specific project, and we could know about it, but we're actually not the final entity which is going to be signing the contracts and is going to be advertising that. And that is really why it's important to understand the difference between what are the private development projects versus what is considered a public works, a Chapter 6 project that's being let out by the department. And that's often a foundational question you can ask is this Chapter 6 or is this a developer agreement? And that will help you understand, how do I get access to the decision makers, which is ultimately what you want to do. How do I figure out how I can get onto these projects? So you need to know who is the decision maker. So in the real property transactions, the decision maker that you really need to know about is who is the developer. Now, the developers, there's going to be another session which is with Josh Keene, which is about specifically the private developments, the pipeline, the process, and these are many, many, many year projects, multi-years, career-long projects. So the other session will go through some of the other projects, the relationships, how that kind of works. So please see that workshop if you want more information, kind of really digging in on what's happening on the development. This is intended to be the larger overview. So some of the largest projects that we have going on in private development are at Mission Rock and at Pier 70. Mission Rock is the project run by the Giants and Tishman Spear. And there are a bunch of different parcels that are happening at Mission Rock. There's active construction happening right now. Numerous parcels are happening at the same time. It is a very dense site, so there's a lot of active construction. If you haven't been by it, you definitely should go by, because that is going, that will look different on a week-to-week basis. The other big project is Pier 70, which is at Pier 70. And that is being done by Brookfield Developments. That construction is taking a pause right now, but we do hope that that will get up and running in the near future. And you can see from some of these images, you can get a sense of the level of construction and the scale of what's happening. There are multiple buildings, there are parks and open spaces, there's a lot of different infrastructure that's happening, both horizontal and vertical work at both of these two projects. Some of the other private developments that are happening that are all in various stages of development, and once again, the workshop specifically on development will give you more insight into that. They include Parcel K North and Teatro Zinzani, which are all in different stages of construction. But then I also put up the two other Piers projects, because these are projects to get on your radar, which will not be in construction for definitely a number of years, but they're things to, as I say, get on your radar. One is Piers 38 and 40, which is in the upper right-hand corner. Those are making significant changes to the long finger piers. And then finally, Piers 30, 32, and Seaball Lot 330. This is a project that just finished the developer selection process probably about 10 months ago. And that is for work along two piers, as well as the seawall lot, which you can see in the rendering will be a large, a couple of apartment buildings. So future port projects, a lot of construction design that will be happening, but not yet. So items to get on your radar. Next, the similarities and difference. So this is the cheat sheet into understanding who are the decision makers for these different projects. First of all, who awards the contract? And the reason why you want to know who awards the contract is that really helps you understand, what are the insurance terms going to be? Who do I negotiate with? How do I negotiate with them? So for the Chapter 6 departments, the construction projects, the port will be the one who awards the contract. For Chapter 21 contracts for commodities and services, those are ultimately awarded by OCA, although the port, of course, is the client. And then finally, for the private development, it's the developer who awards the contracts. So in terms of making sure that you're connecting with the right folks and you're understanding the time frame, it's getting on the developers' outreach list so that you understand, well, who are they looking for and what is their schedule and when are they looking for different projects. Who does solicitations? The port will do help with the solicitations for both the Chapter 6 and Chapter 21 contracts. Once again, the private development contracts, those solicitations are done by the developer. For outreach, no surprise, Chapter 6 and Chapter 21 contracts are done by the department, the port, and the developers handle their own outreach. And then in terms of finding opportunities, the two ways you're going to find information about port projects is one at SF City Partner, which is the city-wide bidding website. And we also have a port website where we also list our construction. We list more information about our construction opportunities, because as you know, you can't do online bidding for construction projects. So you can check both SF City Partner as well as the port website. And I will have links to both of these in the next slide. For the private development projects, there's really two ways of making sure that you're seeing opportunities. One is that the developers do use SF City Partner for specific smaller packages that are getting advertised. So SF City Partner should be a regular stop at your solicitation, researching opportunities, making sure your bidding teams are checking on that website. And then the developer will also maintain their own lists. They may even have their own outreach teams. And then a lot of these developer projects, they're actually having separate construction teams on the different parcels. So it's understanding, hey, what's happening on each of the sub parcels and who's the lead construction firm on that project, so you can know who to talk to. Some of the developer primes are available for networking today. So please make sure that you're going to look at all the people who have registered for this workshop through the way in which you found us, and make sure that you can ask to have an opportunity to connect with those individuals, and you can hopefully schedule a meeting today for a one-on-one time to get FaceTime with that particular kind of developer team. One of the things we wanted to make sure that we accomplished today is that one thing we've missed during the pandemic and from this event is the opportunity to really connect one-on-one with people with good FaceTime. And that is where hopefully these sessions where you can get one-on-one meetings with folks will allow you time to understand what's really going on with this person, have a private meeting, and make sure that you're able to connect and understand the opportunities. So those are the major differences between the decision makers between a public works project, a public project, and a private development project. So the question is that a lot of folks want to know is, hey, this is really great, but how do I make sure I stay connected to what's happening? Pier 3032 sounds great, but that's not going to happen for a number of years. So how do you connect with the port? First is we have this QR code. Pull your phone up to the screen, take a snapshot, and sign into our opt-in form. The opt-in form will make sure that when the port is conducting future outreach, that we're pulling from the opt-in form so that we know that we're connecting with you. The next is that my team, thank you to Tiffany, especially for hosting. We do a monthly office hours on the third Wednesday, 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock. And at this office hours, it's a way for us to continue to have a one-on-one conversation. These are informal, these are drop-in, come in with a question, come in just with a chance to connect. We've had a wonderful opportunity getting to connect with folks during office hours, so please come find us. If you can't make this specific time, we'll schedule a time with you, another time with you, to have a one-on-one conversation. So please know the port definitely wants to hear from the small businesses to understand how do we understand what's going on with you, and then how do we direct you to some of the great opportunities. We've also have found that office hours are a great resource to also just answer general questions around proposing and bidding on city projects, whether with the port or whether with another entity. We want to make sure that we can connect you with the right people who can help get your questions answered. Then how do I connect with the port? Come to the open house. We were planning this event for months, which is why we're in a virtual format, but we really do hope to return to other formats in a way that we can make sure that we know what's going on with you and that you're connecting with us. And then finally, the advertisements. There's two big ways of finding out what's happening at the port. The first link is SF City Partner. If you need help using the portal, please feel free to let us know, and we can help connect you with the individuals who understand how to find the opportunities at the city and other entities. And then finally, the last link is the SF Port Contracting Opportunities webpage, which lists all the opportunities that are happening at the port. We cross-post everything with SF City Partner with the contracting opportunities, but it doesn't always hurt to check both, since we do have both. And these are ways in which you can find out what's happening with the port and what's going on. As I mentioned, there are a number of other workshops today with some of the other folks at the port. This is kind of your general overview. And then as the day goes on, you'll get kind of deeper and more information around the specific projects. And with that, I'm now going to answer any questions. Now, I saw that there was already a question around wanting to know about LBE opportunities. So let me see around how do we learn about the LBE opportunities with the port? So the LBE opportunities are in each solicitation. There is going to be a requirement on each project with the solicitation. And from there, you will then look at the scope of work and determine, is this something in the ballpark of what we kind of do? And all of our projects that are locally funded will participate in the 14B LBE program. And the other way, if you want to know more about specific LBE opportunities, is to also come to office hours, and we can kind of go through the specific projects and help you understand. We will not be able to guide you through this because we can't give you extra help in bidding. But if you want to know in general information around how to read the documents, that's something we can help you with. I also are there other questions that folks have in the chat? Please feel free to post your questions and we can answer them. I see we have a bunch of different folks in different areas. It's really great. Future projects on the waterfront. There are, in terms of private development, I think you've heard of the major ones, Piers 30, 32, 38, 40. The other major initiative, which I did not mention, which you can hear from Adam about this afternoon, I believe at 2 or 3, is specifically about the Resilience Project. The Resilience Project and making sure that our city is prepared for the impacts of climate change and the possible rising of the water is a big initiative of the port. Please connect with Adam to understand more about kind of the time frame of what's happening there in terms of that. I mean, that is one of the biggest projects that will happen. Let's see. Do we have projects that are set aside for micro LBEs? The answer is yes. And the projects that we expect to do for micro LBEs, first, for each opportunity that the port does, we first look to see, is this a micro LBE opportunity? And when I say, is this a micro LBE opportunity, we're looking for a couple of things. What's the dollar value? Because if it's too big, that cannot be a micro LBE opportunity. And is there micro LBE availability? The port has done a number of micro LBE opportunities in the past, and in the future, we expect to do a micro LBE construction management solicitation probably next year. But then the other opportunities that come up, the first analysis we do is, do we think that this could be a micro LBE opportunity? We recently did a communications micro LBE solicitation, and we also did a micro LBE solicitation for interpretive design signage. And then Bridget, if you could unmute yourself and help me with another question.
Sure. When do you expect the public works projects to come out to bid, especially the early projects?
When they say public works projects, I'm assuming that you mean the resilience projects. I would recommend going to the workshop this afternoon with Adam on the resilience schedule. I believe the earliest is not until late next year, but once again, the resilience team will know that as to when those are expected to go out for bid. But in general, the public works projects, as I mentioned, when we have a public works project, Shannon can talk more about that at the engineering workshop. But the first process is, can our maintenance department do it? Will public works do it? And then finally, may it go out to bid? So it's a little while from the time we've identified a project until it actually is advertised on the street. Bridget, next question, please.
More info on private developments that are on the rise.
The best info I have is the Pier 3032 and the Piers 3840 seawall lot 330. I believe the seawall lot 330 Piers 38 group calls Pacific Cornerstone is available for networking today through the one-on-one sessions. I believe they can tell you more about that specific project. But the other kind of stuff that might be in the hopper yet, we're not close to a point where we know exactly what the other projects are going to be. And once again, Josh at his session about private developments, that you're going to hear from the development team. So if they have any secrets they can release today, they'll know. You'll be able to hear them from there. Next, Bridget, please.
How to become more informed about hydrographic surveying work related to the Port of San Francisco.
So that's pretty specific. It sounds as if we obtain a lot of our specific engineering services through our as needed engineering contracts that we do, which are multi-million contracts, which are bid out every 3 to 4 years, because that is such a specific scope that we wouldn't necessarily bid out a contract just for that. We expect to bid out our next round of as needed engineering contracts, hopefully later this spring. Spring, possibly early summer. So keep your eyes open for that and make sure that you're going to the opt-in form and all of that, because when we advertise that, we'll make sure that that's being advertised widely. But that also that at the pre-proposal meetings that you're participating, so you can let some of the primes know that you're interested in probably being a sub on their team for that specific work. At this time, there isn't a list of projects for that specific scope that I know of, but that is managed, those contracts, the as needed engineering contracts for a scope like that would be managed by our engineering team. And the workshop later today, those are the engineering folks. You can speak directly to them about that. Bridget, next question, please.
As a full service mitigation resiliency contractor / consultant, should we look at both consulting and contracting opportunities?
Can you read that again, please?
Yeah. As a full service mitigation / resiliency contractor / consultant, should we look at both consulting and contracting opportunities?
We don't make it, we use the phrases consulting and contracting kind of interchangeably. We hire a consultant or we hire a contractor. For that particular the kind of mitigation, it sounds as if that might be a type of scope that our as needed planning and environmental contracts may be used. And that may be an interesting area for you to look into. Those, like our as needed engineering contracts, are advertised every few years. We expect to advertise that either kind of winter or early next year in terms of that particular scope. So once again, same as the as needed engineering contracts, get on the list so that we can make sure that we're advertising to you so that you can join a team to participate on those scopes. I think we have time for another question or two.
For me to read you? Okay.
Yes,
well,
please.
These are kind of, they've repeated, and it's basically a list of available work, exposure to the process and future projects for the waterfront, and just what public and private opportunities are coming up. So those are kind of redundant, but
yeah, I mean, I think that this shows the overlap and what folks are curious about, which is how do I make sure that I have opportunities? How do I make sure that I know what's going on? And that the key is really making sure that that you're keeping your eye on those 2 portals that I've mentioned, that you're coming to events like this, we have an opportunity to talk, and then really take advantage of the one-on-one time, right? The informal network of making sure, especially if you provide a subspecialty, that primes think of you as being able to be someone they want to team with, and participating is really a great way to make sure that you're in on what's happening. And with that, I just want to say thank you, everybody, for joining us. Hopefully we can see you in person next year. And if you need to reach me, you can find me at stephanie.tang, T-A-N-G, at sfport.com. And with that, I think we'll close the session. Thank you, everybody.